So imagine a number of different zero-knowledge applications. Maybe something like a ZK airdrop, where you want to claim some tokens from a completely unlinked account and enable anonymous governance, where you then don't know who is voting for what. But then you need to avoid people double claiming. Or imagine an anonymous net message board, where you want people who are commenting to be able to say, I'm the same commenter from here. I was the original poster. So you want some notion of anonymity, but also correlations across different posts if they're the same person and that person desires to link it. Or maybe anonymous voting, where you have an anonymity set that you know is allowed to vote, but you want to prevent people from double voting. Or really, any Sybil-resistant anonymous application. So after a good amount of discussion, we realized the thing that's missing to do all these things is ZK nullifiers. And so we decided to develop our own scheme. I'm Ayush from Xerox PARC and MIT, and I worked with Lakshman, Kobe, Weijie, and a number of other people on helping create this scheme. So let's try to think about what exactly all these applications have in common, and specifically, what are the properties we want in this nullifier concept. So first, we want it to be unique. So each person has a different value or anonymous nullifier associated with themselves. We want it to be deterministic. So we don't want people to be able to generate multiple different values, or they'd be able to double claim or get around the Sybil resistance mechanism. We want it to be verifiable without the secret key. So we want this signal. We can verify that it's both unique and deterministic without the user pasting around their private key. And for instance, in a secure enclave, you can't even remove the secret key from the enclave. So we also want to be able to ensure that people with hardware wallets are able to use this nullifier. And finally, you want it to be non-interactive. You may have heard of something like Tornado Cache or Semaphore, where you have interactive nullifiers in which someone first has to register, and then as the anonymity sets grows, they can then interact further with the protocol. But we want to avoid having these small anonymity sets to begin with and ensure our anonymity set from the very beginning is a set of all the people who are allowed to interact with the protocol. So let's try to go through some ideas to think about ways we can understand these properties and formalize why we do or don't need them. So one easy example to think of to start with is deterministic ECDSA signatures. Now, you might have seen these in Ethereum because you have to sign your transactions or sign other messages with a deterministic signature. But the issue with this is that these aren't actually verifiably deterministic. In order to verify that these signatures were generated correctly, you need access to the secret key. And so if you're only checking that something was a deterministic ECDSA signature, someone can get around any verifier by just changing out the randomness. So this won't work for our verification property. Another idea in the literature is an idea called verifiable unpredictable functions. Now, the issue with this is that all the existing papers do them on pairing-friendly curves. And ECDSA's curve, which is SecP256K1, the one used in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and most cryptocurrencies, is not pairing-friendly. So we actually can't use any of the existing literature on VUFs. One idea that we can also think of is a hash of the public key. And the message here refers to your level of anonymity. So maybe it's the thread that you're commenting on in the message board, or the application name of the voting application, or the token ID for the airdrop. So imagine a hash of the message in the public key. And this is your nullifier, which is anonymous. It doesn't reveal anything about yourself, but is still unique, deterministic, and verifiable. This seems to be almost exactly what we want. But one issue is that you can actually reverse the anonymity of this. Someone can go through all the 300 million public keys in Ethereum, calculate all the possible hashes, and check which one yours is. And so the anonymity is broken with someone with even a little bit of computing power. So for something a little bit more anonymous, we could try something maybe like hash of message and secret key, because this is still unique per account. It's deterministic. And someone can't just brute force all the public keys because no one has access to all the secret keys. But the issue with this is the verifiability. In order to verify this, you need access to the secret key because you're verifying something inside of a hash. And so this would not work. But combining all of these ideas, we can take something like hash of message, comma, public key to the power of secret key. And you'll see that this kind of has the properties we want, where no one can brute force all of the possible values. There's only one per account. It's unique, anonymous, and generally satisfies the properties we have. And later, I'll present a scheme of how we actually verify this without any access to the public key. So with this information, we can kind of formalize the definition that we want of what exactly a ZK nullifier is. And that is a deterministic function of a user's secret key that can be verified with only the public key. And specifically, this value should keep the user completely anonymous. So what exactly is our scheme? And how exactly do we prove it? So there's going to be a lot of math in this slide. So I tried to color code things to you can see which values are the same and where things are calculated. But I'll try to explain a higher level intuition rather than delve into the details. So everyone knows the public message that your token ID string of your application or whatever, and everyone has a Ethereum key pair of secret key and public key. So first, our wallet will calculate all of these signals. So this wallet will, inside the secure enclave, it'll calculate our nullifier at the top. Remember the hash of message public key to the power of secret key, along with a couple of other hashes and values. And the thing to note about these values, not their specific values. You can kind of check later that these all check out. But the main thing here is that given all of these values, you can't derive someone's secret key. And this is important because these are the values that are going to be leaving the secure enclave. So the user will then take these values and plug them into a ZK snark. And the ZK snark will verify that they were calculated correctly. And it does so by verifying this hash value. And again, you can dive into the details and check this works later on. But the kind of intuition behind why this works is that if someone is calculating a hash, they must have known all the values that went into that hash. And so you can prove an order of operations in the way that the person calculated this value, and thus prove that they must have known the secret key. And so this allows you to basically show that this nullifier is unique, satisfies all the properties we had before. And once a user has generated the snark themselves, client side, they can send it to whatever application they're interacting with. And they can say, look, here's my nullifier, which shows that I'm unique, and I can't double spend, double claim, double vote. Here's a proof that it's calculated correctly. And so this enables the anonymity that we were looking for. Now, one interesting thing that we discovered when doing this research is that we actually break this kind of idea of quantum secrecy. So most of Ethereum is completely fine once quantum computers come out, in the sense that people can migrate to a new key pair fairly easily and pass ZK proofs, still maintain the secrecy, and the zero knowledge of all the values inside the ZK proof. But one interesting thing with our scheme is that if you have a quantum computer that can break discrete log and so derive everyone's secret keys, you can actually break the anonymity of our nullifier scheme, because you can derive all the possible nullifiers that people can have, all the values of hash of message, comma public key to the power of secret key, and see who corresponds to what nullifier. And this is kind of interesting, and I've kind of coined this as quantum secrecy interactivity trade-off, because what we've done is we've removed interactivity of a scheme like Semaphore or Trano Cache, and we've replaced it with our scheme to avoid this interactivity. But in return, we've kind of unleashed this quantum lack of secrecy. So you can think of like this trade-off curve where Semaphore, you have to interact with it first, but you have complete quantum secrecy because you only use hashes. And in our scheme, there's no interactivity, but quantum secrecy is broken as soon as quantum computers are viable. And so the question is there something in the middle where we kind of maintain both this like post-quantum secrecy and also don't have the benefits, or we also have the benefits of a non-interactive scheme, where we have the power of the whole anonymity set to begin with. And so this is kind of an open research topic that we're going to be looking into soon. And so the next steps of the scheme are that we already wrote the paper to prove that this is all correct, that you can't, it doesn't leak the secret key, you can't forge additional signatures, it maintains secrecy and uniqueness. And I'll have the link in a QR code on the next slide. We have a blog post that kind of goes through the presentation I just explained in a kind of very hand-holdy manner. And we have a proof of concept finish that I'll also link on the next slide. And the next steps are that we want to kind of integrate this as a standard into wallets, because the secure enclave does need to calculate those signals in the signature and potentially formalize it as an RFC. Great. So if you want to look at our code, which we'll be updating regularly, as well as look at a link to the paper, we have it all on here, and I'll take any questions.
So question. So in terms, this thing as a cryptographic primitive, like, is it actually any different compared to a verifiable random function? Just in terms of syntax.
Yeah, so the verifiable unpredictable function and the verifiable random function have a couple of key differences. And the kind of main thing here is that verifiable random functions aren't unique per key pair. We want this to have a single possible value that we can generate for each unique key pair on Ethereum or Bitcoin or any other scheme using ECDSA. Versus a verifiable random function wouldn't be able to have that. We wouldn't be able to verify it was done correctly.
Wait, but it's a function, right? So for every input that you fix, there's a unique output that you prove you have computed correctly. So can you
So the issue is that you kind of don't want to be able to, you also want anonymity, right? So if you have a verifiable random function, say on someone's public key, then someone can just go through the steps of that verifiable random function on that person's public key and determine what it is. So if you want anonymity, you need like an unpredictable
Follow-up,
one.
have you consulted cryptographers about this? 'Cause, I mean, this is like something that we should, formalize and write up and have security definitions and proofs, right? And like new constructions.
Yeah, so the paper was a master's thesis under a cryptographer at MIT named
I see.
Yeah, Vinod Vaikunthalan.
Look forward to reading it.
Yeah, and the paper has all the cryptographic proofs of all those of all the properties. Yep. Yeah.
Does this work? Or do you have a sense of the order of magnitude of constraints necessary to verify the nullifier inside a ZK contract?
So because we're only verifying hashes, it should be fairly succinct. I would say like less than like 400,000 constraints. Cool. So it should definitely be doable in a browser or client side on any even smartphone level compute. Yeah.
So if you took I guess it was the last strawman, which is the hash of the message and a secret key, and just added a zero knowledge proof to this, you would get sort of the same functionality. And it seems like you would also get quantum secrecy because the proof is broken if the proof has perfect zero knowledge, which is which our proof systems usually do. The hash function has quantum security. I guess the question is the downside of it would be that now your proof isn't some nice DDH proof. It is more complex. You would need to use a generic purpose snark. Do you think that is feasible in this application to just do it's a very small statement still. It's one hash applied to a secret key and a message. So you're using something like Plonk or something like that, or Gross16. Do you think that's feasible for the application, or would there be too much overhead? Of course, the scheme that you have is much more elegant. It's much more direct, but then you get the quantum secrecy. So
there's kind of two issues there. One is that I don't think you actually get quantum secrecy because my kind of model for quantum secrecy is someone can break discrete log on ECDSA. So as a result, given all the public keys in Ethereum, they can rederive all the secret keys. So if you have an adversary with this power, then what they can do is calculate all the secret keys and calculate all the possible hash of message comma secret keys. And so they would actually be able to derive everyone's kind of nullifiers, even with that scheme with the hash, because they would only use a quantum computer to break the discrete log and get the secret keys, and they can do the hash manually on a non-quantum computer. So that's kind of one of the issues that any deterministic function of your secret key is going to be quantum non-resistant.
Yeah, I guess sort of a better scheme would be that if you had some seed which you derived your secret key from, right? I guess you're right. We need one more level of indirection. Yep. We have some seed, and from that, through a hash function, we derive the secret key from, and also from another hash function, we derive the nullifier from.
Yeah, it's a great point.
That would maybe give you the
so if there was some sequence like a seed phrase or something that was kind of one way even with quantum, we could do this, but the one issue is that hardware wallets have a very small memory limit on the order of kilobytes. And so calculating even a very simple ZK snark of just a hash is almost basically impossible inside something like a ledger.
Got it.
As far as we currently know.
Yeah, no, very nice. Thank you.
Great question, though.
I mean, sorry, just one thing.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The interesting thing is that actually, the only reason why quantum secrecy breaks is because the attacker assumes, if you have a quantum computer, right? If just suddenly a quantum computer appears, then the scheme is also broken, right? So anybody can create a nullifier for anyone, and there's no. I guess it's really just quantum secrecy really comes in because the attacker assumes that the hardware wallet is not a quantum computer, which it isn't, but the attacker is one. But it's the imbalance that creates. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah, so my question is about making nullifiers for other schemes that there seems okay, so this is interesting, and we're in a situation where we have private data on the user side, but there's a bunch of applications where the user doesn't have that private data, with TLS Notary, we're able to export attestations from other websites. This feels like a really hard problem to me. I'm curious if you've thought about that.
So I haven't thought about TLS notary specifically, but there is definitely easier ways to do this if you have access to key pairs that aren't restricted to be ECDSA. Like for instance, if you have like RSA key pairs, which I know that some people do on TLS notary, you actually have deterministic signatures out of the box. Because like RSA signatures are deterministic, BLS signatures are deterministic. So you can just use those directly. You don't actually need this whole scheme. So it kind of depends on the encryption functions used in and the signature functions used in your specific implementation of TLS. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm talking about a scheme where you don't have a private key at all.
Okay.
It seems really hard to do. But I'll talk to you more offline about
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk more. I think it might be easier because you have something like TLS notary or something someone has to sign up for it anyways. It might be easier to adapt like an interactive scheme. But we should definitely discuss it.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, thank you, Ayush.